Hi everyone, in this video we are going to start doing some color mixing practice using our worksheet here. You should have a few different brushes. One is a little bit larger flat brush, one is a little bit smaller flat brush. You can see it's like a square shape, and then I have a really small detail brush. I don't know that I'll need that one today, but I have it with me just in case. I also have my cup of water. I have 3 different colors here, just red, yellow, and blue, and my worksheet to get started. I also have a paper towel here if needed. That's always a good thing to have nearby when you paint. And then I also have my palette knife that we're going to use for mixing our colors. So once your area is all set up, we're going to look at the the left side of our paper here. And this is the first column that we'll be painting. You'll notice that it says at the top to start with the lighter color first. And you'll see in that first column, red is at the top and yellow is at the bottom. So you need to think to yourself, red versus yellow, which color is lighter? And I would say that that is yellow. So we are gonna start painting down here. So we can easily just take our paintbrush, load some yellow paint into it. Remember, you don't wanna saturate all of the bristles. You just wanna go about halfway up with the paint. I like to paint from left to right. It feels the most comfortable for my hand. And we have a nice flat brush like this. We go right up to the edge of the paper. We can pull straight across, go right up to the edge of that line to make that box yellow. And then instead of trying to pull to the edge, I like to flip my paper around. And again, just pull left to right to get a nice clean edge there. There we are, starting out a nice solid box of yellow. And then I'm going to add a very small amount of red. I am not going to take the red and put it directly into my cup of yellow. I want my yellow here to stay pure so that I can keep using it for mixing. So I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm actually going to scoop a little yellow paint, 4 or 5 scoops, into a new well on my palette, and this is where I'll be doing my mixing. So if I make a mistake or I don't like the color that I've made, I can start over, but I still have my pure yellow to work with. All right, so I have a good amount of yellow here, and now I'm going to take just a little bit of red, and I'm just going to keep using my palette knife. Some people prefer to use their paintbrush to mix colors. I try to stay away from that and use my palette knife just because I don't like to get my bristles completely saturated with paint. When I say a little bit of red, I really mean just a very small amount of red, and mix that in, and you'll notice that that color changes pretty quickly from a yellow to kind of a gold color. I'm going to mix just a little bit more red in there to get kind of a nice defined golden color. Again, it's nice using a palette knife because it mixes around really easily. And now I'll take this new color, again, load my brush. One thing you'll find is when you paint that next layer, it looks a little bit lighter when it's thin. But you should be able to see a difference between the 2 shades. If they look too similar, you need to add a little bit more red. We want to have 2 distinct colors here. So again, paint straight across. And this direction, paint straight across. Notice how I'm able to keep my edges really crisp when I paint using a flat brush like this. I can keep my lines really nice and straight. I'm going to wash out my brush. I'm going to go back to my color mixing here, and I'm going to add just a little bit more red again. So take a little bit more red, mix it in. And hopefully what you'll see is, again, a little bit more past gold into a light orange color. Take my brush, again, load it about halfway with paint. It's important to make sure that your brush isn't too wet when you load it with paint. If it is wet, it's gonna make your paint look watery. We wanna make sure that this paint is a nice, opaque, solid color. All right, I have 3 different colors here. Again, really nice, distinct, different shades. I'm gonna keep going. Add a little bit more red. Oop, that was probably too much. A little bit of red. We wanna do just a little bit at a time. Because again, red is a pretty powerful color. When you add it to yellow, it does change pretty quickly. Let's do a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more. We want kind of a deep orange now. Again, if you have any water in that brush, use that paper towel to dry your brush off before you start painting. Again, load the paint about halfway up the bristles. Notice how my lines are nice and solid. My goal is I want that color to be nice and even. I don't want it to be streaky. And again, you can see I have nice 4 different shades now of yellow, yellow orange, kind of a lighter orange, darker orange. You can actually see the paint is drying already. It does dry pretty quickly. This is just tempera, and it does dry slightly lighter than what it looks like when it is wet. So if you feel like your color is looking a little bit too dark, give it a second to dry, because it probably will dry a little bit lighter. I'll take a little bit more red now. Now I can add quite a bit of red, because my last color in this box is going to be pure red. So I can get something pretty rich here with some red. We're almost at red, but it still has a little bit of that orange hue to it. Make sure it's nicely mixed so you don't have streaky colors. Again, you want it to be nice and even. Load that with paint. Pull straight across. Make sure you have enough paint on your paintbrush. If you feel like your colors are starting to look a little bit transparent, put another coat down, but you don't need too much. There we go. I'm gonna wash out my brush now, because the last box up here, I'm just gonna use my pure red. You can see I got a little bit of yellow in there, but that's okay. I'll take from here. And here is my pure red. All right, we are 1/3 finished with our painting page. I'm gonna wash out my brush again, because now we are gonna move on to using a new set or a new pair of colors. When I look at the center column here, I notice yellow is at the top, I notice blue is at the bottom. I'm gonna think to myself, what is the lighter color? Again, that's yellow, so we're gonna start with yellow. I'm gonna keep my palette. I don't even need to use a new palette. I don't even need to clean out my palette. I'm gonna do my mixing right in this empty well in between. I have my nice clean brush. Again, start with yellow, my solid yellow. Now I'm going to take just a tiny amount of blue and paint that color here. Again, before I do that though, I need to put some yellow into this well. I also need to clean my palette knife off. A really easy way to get in the habit of cleaning your palette knife is just using a paper towel, put it down, fold it over, and you can just pull that through a paper towel and it cleans it off really quickly and easily. Okay, I'm gonna take some of that yellow, I'm gonna move it over here. It's always good to get in the habit of doing color mixing away from your pure colors, so you can always come back and use more of them if needed. All right, I think that's a good amount. And then I'm going to take a very small amount of blue. So remember when we mixed over here, I had a very small amount of red because red is really powerful. Blue as a darker color is even more powerful. So I'm going to take just a touch of blue on the edge of my palette knife. I might even scrape that off just a little bit so I have even less, because you'll see the color changes very, very quickly when you add a dark color to a light color like this. You can see how quickly that went from yellow to kind of that acid green color. I'm even gonna take maybe I'll take from here, just a little bit more. And look how quickly that color changes. All right, I have a really nice yellow-green now. Again, I'm gonna load up my brush about halfway. If you do this and you realize when you mix the color and you put it down on the paper that it's not quite the color that you were hoping for, maybe it's a little lighter than you thought it was going to be, remember that you can always paint over this. Tempera paint is pretty acceptable with painting colors on top of each other. But again, you want to feel like there's a difference between those two colors. I'm going to take a little bit more blue, add it in. Again, we notice it changes very quickly. If you feel like it changes too quickly, like you've added too much blue, you can always go back and add in more of that yellow, although it is hard to get it back. Once it gets too dark, it's hard to bring it back, but you can add a little bit of yellow back in and try to lighten it up a little bit. Sometimes it's easier though just to start over mixing in a new well if it gets too dark too fast. So again, I have kind of a nice light green now. I'll take that, paint it here. And if you feel like your colors are looking a little opaque, you can always do a second coat, or sorry, a little transparent. You can always do a second coat to make them a little bit more opaque. All right, I'm gonna wash out my brush just because I think it's good to get in the habit. Also, just washing your brush, starting with a clean brush every now and then. I'm gonna take a little bit more blue. Mix that in. You'll see pretty quickly I'm going to get a nice grass green color here. right, I have my nice grass green. I've got 2 more boxes here. I'm gonna make a nice blue green now. I'm gonna add in a fair amount of blue and really darken up this green. I'm gonna add even a little bit more here. Make sure it's thoroughly mixed. There we are. And then my last box, again, I'm just going to use my pure blue and paint that in. As I'm looking at this, I'm using my critical eye, thinking that I probably have a few too many light greens. I probably could have done a few more shades of a blue green, but that's just part of the learning process when we make, you know, a mistake that we recognize. If I did this again, now I know what I would do differently, and I can change that up next time. But our biggest goal is that we have nice crisp lines between our boxes, and we have thoroughly mixed different colors so that when we look at each box feels like a distinctly different color than the one that's next to it. If I could go back, I would probably make this my second box, third box, fourth box, maybe make a new color in between these two. But for this video, we're gonna leave it for now. All right, I'm on my last column. Again, wash out my paintbrush. And again, I'm gonna think about what the lightest color is between blue and red. I know that red is definitely lighter than blue. So we're gonna start down here at the bottom. I'm gonna take, again, my pure red that I have here. I'm just gonna color in that box 1 shade. And then I'll use my palette knife. Again, my palette knife is still pretty dirty. So the first thing I'll do, I'll just take it to my paper towel, put it down, put the paper towel on top of it, pull it. It's pretty clean already. I'm gonna dip it in my water. Do that one more time, just clean it off a little bit more. All right. And I'm gonna take some of that red. I'm gonna put that pure red in a cup right over here next to my blue, because that's where I'll be doing my mixing. All right, here we go. I know that, again, blue is a really powerful color, so I'm going to take just a little bit of blue, like this. Mix that into my red. I'll do just a little bit more. I really want to have a distinct color between the red and the next box. It's almost kind of like a maroon color. I'm gonna wash out my brush because it has pure red on it right now. So I'm gonna wash that. Oop, got a little bit more blue in there. There we go. Take a little bit more blue. Oop, not too much. We don't want to go too dark too fast. It can be kind of tricky to figure out exactly how much you want each color to change in each box. I want it to be a little bit darker. The proportion of red to blue in order to make purple is just about 50-50. And so you do need to add a fair amount of blue if you really want to get a nice grape purple. You'll notice also that the paint gets really dark, so sometimes you can't even tell exactly what color you have until you spread it out a little bit on the paper, and then you can kind of see. So you can see I have a nice red violet right now, kind of that like grape, like a red grape color, but I want it to be even more purple, like a real bubblegum type of purple. So one thing I might do sometimes is sometimes I'll even start a new blue cup. Instead of adding a lot of blue into here to change that color, sometimes it's faster to put some blue in the cup, and then I can take the purple I've already made and add it in here. So my proportion is a little bit easier to work out. And then I can mix these up. If your colors are looking really dark and you're having a hard time telling, like what color have I actually mixed here? Sometimes I'll take a blank piece of paper, just like a scrap piece of paper, take a little bit and put it on that blank paper to see, okay, what kind of color do I have there? And sure enough, I do have kind of that purpley grape color that we're looking for. So I'm gonna take that, put that next to my red violet. You can see there's a big jump in color there. I probably could have done this again. I could have had a little bit more red in there, but that's okay. And again, if you feel like it's a little dark, it is gonna dry lighter. You'll be able to see those color shifts a little bit easier when they're dried. I'm gonna take some blue. I'm gonna add some more blue into that purple I just made. We're making a nice deep blue violet now. I'll even just a little bit more. And again, it almost looks black to my eye, but I know that when I actually paint it on the paper and it dries, it's not going to look black. There's a little bit of trust involved here that when it dries, it's gonna look the right color. And again, that last box, I can just take my pure blue that I have, wash out my paintbrush, take that pure blue. I did get a little bit of yellow in there, but it's not too bad. And paint that nice pure blue. All right, there we have it. And you can see already my first column is dry, my second column is nearly there. And you can see in just some spots how this violet is already starting to lighten up as it dries. Thanks for following along.